emergency and you gave space to them. Do you feel better about that than they're a jerk? Probably. How about when you're co-oping with another agent? Am I the only one that's ever created a story around a co-op? I'm sure I am. Right? What if you stopped and said, what else could be true? And then suddenly you're like, how can I help them? Right? Instead of, how can I choke them and hide the body? Right? So taking control and being at cause and not at effect. Does everybody know what I mean when I say being at cause and not at effect? I hope you can see. So I'm holding my pen, right? And when I drop my pen, I was the cause of my pen falling and the pen was at effect. So if you can place yourself at cause, basically, has anybody read the book Extreme Ownership with the Navy SEALs? If you can take ownership of absolutely every single thing that happens in your world, then that puts you in the driver's seat. I love little quotes. And I read a quote recently that said, if you're driven, you're not in control. And if you're the driver, you control the path. So
that's a good one.
I liked that. I like just
Say
a
that
quote
again.
and some things up.
Say it again.
If you're driven, you're not in control. And if you're the driver, you control the path.
If you're being driven by Uber and you're sitting in the back seat, you're not in control.
No.
But if you're driving the car, you have 100% control.
Right. Right. So being in control of the story that you choose gives you control of your day. It gives you control of your life. It gives you control of the situation when you choose the story. And that's a super easy thing to talk about and to say, and it takes practice to do that because our emotions happen first. So it's really about being conscious of saying, okay, and what else could be true? That could be true. And what else could be true? And then that internal representation that we create, it combines with our physiology and it creates our state, right? And so our state could be a happy state. It could be a sad state. It could be motivated. It could be pleased. It could be challenged. So any number of states, and you can change your state fairly easily, right? By changing your story. So our world is not really made up of events that happen to us or truths. It's really made up of series of stories that we've chosen to tell. Andy Andrews, another awesome Andy, who wrote The Traveler's Gift, says the good news and the bad news is that wherever you are today, you're there because of a series of decisions that you made. And the great news is if you don't like where you are today, you can make a series of decisions that take you someplace else. So there's the good news, good news, or the good news, the bad news, good news. So we all filter things through 5 different filters. So we have the meta programs, and those are our shortcuts that tell us how to react and respond to things, our values, our decisions, and our memories. And so today I want to take you through some opportunities to learn some tricks to help in communicating with your family, your friends, and your clients, and even with yourself. Does that sound fair? Okay. All right, let's talk first about sensory acuity. So sensory acuity is just being aware of changes in people's physiology from moment to moment. So one of the easiest things to notice is a change in skin color. So now that we're Zooming a lot, this is can be a little bit more challenging. If you have just 2 or 3 people, how many people are doing Zoom listing appointments or buyer consultations? Do your little hand raise on your, at the bottom, under reactions. Okay, Nick, I see is doing them. Okay. So if you're doing a consultation with Zoom and you have a larger screen, it would be a little bit easier to see people's reactions. But when you're in person, you can notice people's skin change in their skin color, usually from light to dark when they're having a reaction to something that's happening, or also their skin tonus, like the tone of their skin. So when my husband is not pleased about something, his skin tone changes, right? Specifically around his lips. His top lip will get tight, and I can tell that this is like he's not typically not with me, because he'll just tell me. He doesn't go that it doesn't get that far. But like if we're in a conversation with someone that he's kind of holding his tongue, I can tell when I'm like, okay, this is building, right? So noticing when somebody has a physiological change, they may change their breathing. Their lower lip may change sizes. That's a very subtle one, by the way. The dilation of their pupils may change. So let's say that you're talking to a seller about an offer. You're presenting the offer. And suddenly you notice that the husband starts to have some redness on his cheeks. It's like a little splotchy. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? When some people get a little splotchy through here. And so what does that mean? I mean, you don't really know what it means, right? It could mean that he's hot. It could mean that he's excited. It could mean that he has a question. It could mean that he's uncomfortable. It could mean anything, right? It could mean just nothing. It could just be his body reacting to whatever's happening in the room. And what it means for you is that something is going on, and that you should stop and pay attention to that and ask if he has a question. Like you wouldn't say, hey, I noticed your faces get really red and splotchy. Like, do you want to ask me something? It would just be so we've talked about a lot. Do you have any questions? Did you have some input, right? You're just pausing because you're noticing that something is changing with him. Some people's body physiology will change, right? They'll shift in their seat, but being aware of that so that you are tuned in to be able to stop and ask those questions. Let's look at creating and maintaining rapport. So rapport is a process of responsiveness that creates trust and understanding. Now, rapport doesn't necessarily mean that you like someone. Do you like everyone that you work with in real estate? Not necessarily. It's not, some people you become best friends with, and some people you just are the best agent that you can be and get them through their transaction and do a fabulous job for them and help them the next time around, but you're not going to go on vacation with them, right? And so rapport doesn't necessarily mean liking someone or liking what's going on. It's just creating a responsiveness that creates trust and understanding. So I believe that they should probably teach rapport building in pre-license class. And have you ever been in a situation where you meet somebody for the very first time and you're just immediately connected? Like it was effortless. It seemed like you had everything in common, right? You were totally comfortable. You told them things that you haven't told people that you've known for years. You might even have said, why am I telling you? I can't believe I'm telling you this. Right? And it felt really good, didn't it? Like everything just clicked. And we've all witnessed two people in love and how they're just completely lost in each other and they're totally unaware of the world around them. And then in contrast, have you had that experience where try as you might, you just cannot connect with someone? You're trying everything to find something to connect with them on, and you just can't get a connection. What was that energy like? Painful, right? Very painful. So it just makes you like want to run away. So people like people that are like them. We all do. It makes us comfortable, right? And so we see something, we actually see see in other people what we have in ourselves, good and bad. And that's a whole different class, right? And so in the real estate business, sometimes we have just seconds to establish that rapport. So during your listing presentation, you're often with two different people who have two different learning styles. And so being able to master holding rapport with multiple people and allowing them to move forward in signing the listing presentation. If I could show you a way to establish rapport with your potential clients in seconds so that they open up and they want to work with you, do you think that would be a good use of your time today? Okay, great. So let's see if we can use these techniques to create a state of responsiveness with your family members. Maybe like to connect better with their family members in a shorter amount of time. Okay, awesome. Or with your co-op agents, negotiating a contract. I mean, if you could use some influence and get them to see it your way in this particular market, would that save you some time? Okay. All right. So here's what I mean by rapport. So rapport is the process of responsiveness. So in the state of rapport, people can create trust and understanding. So communication is so much more than the words that we speak. I mean, that makes sense, right? So only 7% of our communication comes from our words. 38% comes from our tonality, and 55% comes from our physiology. Now think about that for just a second. 7% from our words, 38% from our tonality, and 55% comes from our physiology. I am constantly emphasizing with our agents, and have been for the 17 years that I've been in leadership with Keller Williams, the importance of not texting or emailing when it deals with money or relationships, because you are only dealing with words, and that's only 7% of the communication. I was assisting one of our agents with a very difficult client, and she was a difficult client, and I had finally gotten into rapport with her, and we were moving on a good track, moving forward, and her transaction, it was complicated. And it was about 7 o'clock on a Friday evening, and I was watering my plants in my kitchen, remember it clearly. And I received a text from her saying, "I'm so frustrated." And in my mind, I replied back on my text, "I'm frustrated with you," meaning it had been a very frustrating scenario. But now I want you to just take those words, "I'm frustrated with you." What did she read? "I'm frustrated with you." So rapport instantly broken. And her reply of "what?" with question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, like clued me in immediately to go back and read my text. And of course, as soon as I looked at it again, my tonality of how I sent it, my intent was one way, right? And how she got it was a completely different way. So of course I immediately picked up the phone and said, "Oh my gosh, nope, here's how I said it," right? It just didn't come. And she was like, "Well, I wondered what was going on," right? So the basis of rapport being people like them. And so we establish rapport by mirroring and matching in the 3 areas that I just mentioned. So words, tonality, and physiology. So mirroring is when your actions are a mirror of what the other person is doing. So for example, and it's hard to mirror anybody here because I can't, because most of you don't have your cameras on. And then the ones that do, I can only see you from like here, like the same place you can see me. So if you were to mirror somebody, it would be like you would raise, like you were looking in a mirror, right? So if they raised their right arm, if I raised my right arm, Jill would raise her left arm, and it would be a mirror of what I was doing. Yes, right, that would be mirror. To matching is when you do exactly what they're doing. So if I picked up my drink, then Jill would pick up her drink. And that would be a matching. Yes, there you go. Thank you, Jill. So if the client speaks faster than you speak and you were going to match them, then you would increase your rate of speed, your speech. If you have a client that speaks slower, then you would slow your rate of speech. So in NLP, we call it pacing and leading. And so some of the major categories that can be paced and led, can be words. So you would want to match their sensory words. So people use different sensory words based on their learning style. So someone who is visual will use words like I see, phrases like I see. Someone that's auditory may say, I hear what you're saying. Someone who's kinesthetic would say, well, I feel. Kinesthetic is a texture feel. So figuring out what their modality is, their sensory modality, and using those words is a great way to connect with them. As a matter of fact, it's the top way to connect with them. And then keyword backtracking, a word that they use, because people like people that are like them. So if there is a favorite word or phrase that they like to use, I like the word awesome. So if somebody wanted to keyword backtrack with me, I use awesome a lot. So listening to figure out what words and languaging they're using, and then implementing those words into their into your languaging with them. And then when they hear that, right, they're like, this person speaks my language. Common experiences. We do that, I think, very well as agents. And then content chunks. Y'all will appreciate content chunks. So if they're a detailed person, breaking down what you're saying to detailed, and if they're a high level, big picture thinker, bringing it up to just the big picture. You have clients sometimes, right, that really like a lot of detail. And then you have clients sometimes that are just, you're like, you're going to need more detail than that, right? True? So bonding with someone based on the level of detail that they want to have. If you try to give somebody who's really big picture a lot of details, they're going to be out. And if you try to give big picture somebody who likes a lot of detail, it's going to be a mismatch as well. So in your tonality, right, the pitch, the speed, the quality of your voice, the loudness of your voice. If you have someone who's a soft talker, lower your voice. These things you've learned in Bold, right? For those of you who've been through Bold. If you haven't been through Bold, I definitely recommend going to Bold. But if just matching their speed, and you can do this instantly. Sometimes when you get a call, these are great things to do when you're not face-to-face with someone. When you get a call and the person calls you and they're talking soft and they're talking slow and they're immediately lower your voice and match their speed and their tempo, right? And if you get somebody who's calling and going, hey, I just saw the house on the corner of Main Street and I need to do that, then you need to pick it up and go with them, and that'll immediately bond. In physiology, our posture, our gestures, facial expressions, all of those things you can mirror and match. Blinking and breathing are examples of areas that can be paced and led as well. So if you want to measure, if you're in a meeting with someone, and now that we've talked about this today, by the way, the next time that you're in a group of people, you'll look around and you'll watch the mirroring and matching. Am I right, Jill? Right? And you'll wonder, is that person, are they matching me on purpose? Are they mirroring and matching me on purpose? And this sounds like it's kind of complicated, but the truth is that people mirror and match naturally. You get into rapport with people naturally, and this is something that happens with humans that are just in rapport. And so when you're doing this, no one's going to be like, what are you doing? Now, obviously, when you're mirroring and matching someone, you don't want it to be like that game you played, the copycat game when you were a child, right? Where they do something and you do exactly the same thing. That's just going to be weird. So if they take a drink, you don't need to necessarily take a drink, but you can just touch your drink. And that would be enough to build the rapport. You can mirror or match the way they're sitting. You can match their breathing. That's extraordinarily subtle. If they have their hand on the table, you can put your hand on the table. If they cross their legs, you can cross your legs. If they uncross their legs, you can uncross your legs. And again, not like you're having a staring contest and matching what they're doing. The next time you're in a room with people, could be your family, just watch how people are behaving the same way, sitting the same way, doing the same thing. When you measure the level of rapport that you're in, and you can see if you can lead someone. That's when you're in the deepest rapport. And that would be if you made a move and they followed you. So if you have your hand on the table and then you did this with your hand, and then just give it a few seconds to see if the person you're talking to also leaned up on their hand. And with so many of us going through bold, again, when you're in a group, somebody will say inevitably, "Are you matching me?" And then people are like, "No, didn't even think about it till you just brought it to my attention." People in a room just naturally get into rapport. So watch your clients. You'll tell instantly if you're in rapport with them, if they're in rapport with each other, right? That's a good, just to become aware and start to notice it. That's part of your sensory acuity. Sensory acuity is just really watching and being aware of how people exist and how they are and when it changes, because the change is what you're watching for, because that tells you that something is different and you need to ask a question or pause and allow them to interject. Any questions so far? I've just been talking and y'all just, I hope, listening.
Taking it all in.
Okay. All right. So 4 indicators of rapport would be like an internal feeling. So for a kinesthetic person, it might be butterflies because they're the feeling. For visual, it would be a color shift. And usually that's from light to dark, as we talked about before. And for an auditory person, it might be, do I know you? Have we met before? Have you ever had that feeling or said that or had someone say that to you before? My husband and I just met one of our close friends as a new lady in his life. And that was the first thing I said to her was, "You look really familiar to me. Have we met before?" And it was an instant rapport for us with her. But that was right when she sat down. I was like, "Have we met before?" She's like, "Nope, I don't think so." So, I feel like we've known you for years. Those would be things an auditory person would say, or and an auditory digital, which is kind of a combination of those, all of those, would when if you lead, if you pace, they lead. Or I'm sorry, if you lead, they follow you. That would be a sure sign that you're in rapport. And like we talked about before, just testing it by shifting your position. And it's just don't distract yourself from your listing presentation by being so impressed with the fact that you're in such deep rapport that you can lead them. Done that. So here's the order that's most effective of those ones that we just talked about in order to establish rapport. So matching their modality. So if they're visual, if they're auditory, or if they're kinesthetic. So listening to their words, the words that they use will tell you what modality. So matching that first and using those words. Physically mirroring them. Crossing your legs if they're crossing their legs. Matching their voice. Matching their breathing. And then matching the size of the pieces of information. And then matching common experiences. Which was kind of interesting to me because I feel like in real estate, most of the time we start with number 6, which is common experiences. Oh, you have a boat, I have a boat. Oh, I go to that church too. I love the color pink. Please list with me. So that was helpful to me to know that was actually the last one on the list.
Steph, why do we automatically go to that last one? Because I do that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's the easiest. Is that why?
I don't know. Maybe it's because it's an obvious one as opposed to the others are more subtle, like we do the other ones, but I think we do them unconsciously. Right? And so this is like, and maybe also because we've been taught over the years that you create common interest with people. The other five we all do naturally. And so by taking something that we do naturally and actually honing it as a skill and making it more intentional, we can be more purposeful. And I think the fact that it is natural is what makes them more effective, because it is something that humans do naturally and instinctively to connect. Because we naturally like people that are like us.
So where does this fall into your own personality type? Because everybody's different.
Mhm.
And someone like me who's outgoing, and so a lot of those are pretty easy for me, but someone who may be more reserved, is that something that they need to figure out how to do naturally themselves, or is that something that they can change?
So let's talk about that, because that's a great point, right? So as someone who is naturally outgoing, it may be just as difficult for you to slow your speech as it is for someone who speaks slowly to increase their speech. So I think that as salespeople, we need to remember that we're the chameleon, and in order to be effective, we adapt to who's in front of us. So if you think of yourself as an actor or an actress playing a role, right? What's the story? Has anybody had any acting experience? Done any acting now that Atlanta's the new LA? We had a movie filmed at our office in Woodstock, and I had an opportunity to have my first little movie role, and I actually got to speak. So and it was super fun. But one of the things that they tell you is to create I had my like 33 seconds. 33 seconds might even have been stretching it for my part. But anyway, but they tell you to create a backstory for your character for all 30 seconds, and then you become that character for that piece, right? So in real estate, who do you need to become in order to serve this client at the highest level? Do you need to be a fast talker? Do you need to be a slow talker? Do you need to be more outgoing? Do you need to be more reserved? So it's a part you're playing for that particular piece of time. It's not who you are, it's just the role you're playing for this particular client.
That makes sense.
I know it used to, if I worked with someone that was very detail oriented, it took a lot of energy for me, because naturally I'm not very detail oriented. And so I would have to really get myself into that mindset in order to not take all of my energy, and know that I was going into you know, what's the tonnage of the air conditioning, and as opposed to my other client who just said, it has an air conditioning, right? Yes. So, knowing what you're walking into, and mentally preparing to be that role. Any other questions? Going back to the story with Tristan, I was telling my son what happened, and he said, "You rewarded him for lying?" And I was like, "Of course I didn't reward him for lying. I rewarded him for his objection handling, and also, so he believed in his goal, right? And he had a commitment to create his reality, his results. And so, just remembering that the person with the most passion will always come out on top." And in that scenario, he had a passion for those crackers, and he created that reality around it. So let's unmute, and I want to hear how you're going to utilize this information in your real estate business.
I remember I wouldn't even go to nursery school. I like went a day or so, and then I was like, I'm not
on, somebody.
So I'm a fast talker by nature, and
Mhm.
I like really try to make an effort to slow it down. Or I think my brain just thinks fast, so I kind of forget. Like right now, I'm really trying to slow it down. Anyway, I think that that's my thing of just slowing it down, especially on the phone, because I think that I come in with high energy, and maybe nobody wants the super high energy. So I think that mirroring thing is something that I'm still trying to practice. But it's good that it was brought up at this point, so I can be more intentional about it. Maybe I need to put on a mirror or something. But yeah.
Some people do want the high energy though, right? So just just observing who they are and mirroring who they are. So some people will be like, "Oh, thank God she's going to talk fast because I love to talk fast, and if she talks fast, then we can, they're going to hear you." And some people are going to be like, "I can't even hear you because you're talking too fast." So just watching who they are and then just mirroring who they are. But it's tough, isn't it?
Stephanie, something you said at the beginning I thought was very interesting when you were talking about looking at people's body language or if they become flush. And oftentimes I'll pick up on the cues, but I won't necessarily do anything with that information. And the data point that you gave about using that time to ask a question to try to figure out, why they just shifted, or why, what is it that you just said that caused them to react the way that they did. Just making sure to be cognizant of those cues as they come in.
Right. We sometimes when you notice it, you may think you know what that meant, and we call that a mind read, right? When you are basically reading their mind because you don't really know what it was, and so the only way you really know what it meant was to ask a question, to bring it up. So you may create a story that isn't true. Like, oh, they don't like the commission I just gave them. Maybe they're just excited about it and they're ready to go. Maybe they just got a text and they're running short on time and that's what they're anxious about, but they're fine with everything you said. So yeah, just stopping and asking that question. Thank you.
So that's really important, not to create a story right there and assume.
So yeah, our stories create our life. And so when we create our stories and we can control the stories that we create, then we can create our life.
I had a question.
Okay.
With the matching of I guess, with the voice and the talking, like fast paced versus fast paced. In another sales position I had, and I was just wondering if it's like the same thing. A lot of people who talk fast, they can tend to try to steer the conversation. So is that still something where you can match them but still have control of the conversation yourself, like not let the customer run off and take over and pretty much tell you what's going to happen? You still kind of try to take hold while matching their energy, where you just let them run off and kind of take hold of the conversation?
So if they're talking fast, you're also going to be talking fast. So that would give you an opportunity to take hold of the conversation again. I think that as the professional, you have to be in control of the conversation and try to determine what's causing them to want to control it by asking a question. So if you have somebody who's coming in and they're telling you, like, this is how this is going to go, and this is how this is going to go, and tell me what brings you here today. How can I help?
Right? But isn't, like, even with that, that's more so slowing it down, right? Not really matching their fast-paced energy.
Right. So if they're a really fast talker, just say, great. So it sounds like you've had a lot of experience in selling houses previously. Tell me how I can help you.
Okay.
How do you see me fitting into this process? Right. So that if you want to take control of a scenario, always ask a question. Always ask a question to take control back. And remember, the person that talks the most always thinks it went better. It's the person who thinks the meeting went the best.
All right. Thank you.
Here's a question for you, Stephanie. So I've come into situations sometimes, like for example, like a listing presentation, and you can tell immediately that the person that you're talking to is like on guard, right? Like you're asking questions to one word answers. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? Do you have any thoughts of different things that you might be able to do when you realize for whatever reason they're on the wrong foot with these folks, and you need to try to figure out how to win them back? And it's like no matter what you say or what you do, it's like, so trying to figure out how to yeah. Any thoughts there?
In that instance, I would say you're not in rapport.
Right.
Right. So you have to get back into rapport. I would start with listening to their modalities, right? That are they audio, auditory, or visual, or kinesthetic? Have just some general conversation to hear what terms. And I can send over to Jill like a list of some phrases that you would hear, and she can send it out to everybody that's on the call to help you identify the different modalities. So we'd start there, right, and use some of those modalities so that they're hearing what you're hearing. Those are also in your bowl book. And then matching their breathing and their tonality. You have to get into rapport. I would ask some questions that are non-threatening type questions, not like interrogation type questions, more open-ended type questions. Again, if somebody's giving you like one word answers, you may stop and just say, I'm really excited that you called me today, because selling your home is a partnership, and it's important to find the right professional. In order to help you, there's certain information that I would need to know in order to give you the best answer. Are you comfortable giving me that information, or is there another way you would like me to collect that? How do you see me fitting into this process? What I understand your goal is, what I understand your goal is to get a value for what you can sell your home. Am I understanding your goal correctly? And if they say yes, great. In order to give you an accurate value, there's some information that I'm going to need from you. Are you comfortable asking a few questions in the beginning, right? Starting off that way. And then saying maybe trying to drill down to why they're uncomfortable, and you may get to that and you may not, but making it a little broader. Some people choose to work with me, and some people choose not to work with me. That's a language pattern, which again, a language pattern, we can do different language patterns and do a class with one language pattern. There are like 19 different language patterns. You can choose to work with me, or you can choose not to work with me. The interesting thing is the brain does not hear not. So what you've just said to them is you can choose to work with me, or you can choose to work with me by using that language pattern. So you can choose to work with me, or you can choose not to work with me. My goal today is just to give you the information that you desire so that you can make an intelligent decision and move forward.
Hey, Nick, I've been in that situation too. And one of the things that I found that worked for me one time, I remember, was that as I was going through the house and kind of touring the house and looking for maybe something I could make a conversation with, like if he was a Patriots fan or whatever, I would kind of ask him questions about that. And since I'm a Dolphins fan, we were just kind of striking up a conversation or something like that, just to kind
Very
of have
timely right now.
Yeah, exactly. Some kind of commonality that tends to kind of break the ice and get them talking a little bit more. Because I've been in I know exactly where they're very short and it seems very uncomfortable. And it's like, man, how do you get out of this? And not to go too fast with them. So.
Yeah, it's getting into rapport, right? Creating that trust.
I like it.
Once they trust you. The other thing is, Nick, it could have been that right before you got there, they had a fight. And it had nothing to do with you. And they're just, whoever is being short with you is just irritated with the other person. And maybe they don't really want to sell and the other person does want to sell, and they didn't tell them you were coming and they told them right before you walked in the door. And I mean, it could be any number of things.
Mm-hmm.
that made them be short.
Awesome.
You may talk to them the next time or whatever, and they may be great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any questions? All right,
You
well,
all are
thanks.
so quiet today.
Zoom is a little bit quieter than an in-class thing. I would love to come do some of this live and in person. Are you guys doing in-class, no in-person classes yet?
No, we've tried, and we have a lot of people that aren't comfortable. And so we hopefully, we'll just keep putting it out there. And but we would love to have you in person, Steph, if you would be willing to come down to Smyrna.
Absolutely. I'm not far. Yeah. My prediction is the third quarter, the world opens back up, for no particular
Yeah.
reason.
I like that. I'll take that.
Yeah.
It's better than never.
Certainly better than ever. I'm hoping and shooting for and manifesting third quarter.
Exactly. Good. So if you will please send us those documents,
I will
I
do
will
it.
share it with everybody that's on this call. This is your last call for questions. If anyone's got a question for Stephanie.
I just want to thank her for doing the class for us and to sending the information out.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Cece. I appreciate you having me. Oh,
You're muted, Cece.
I love to talk that way.
She was just lowering her voice tone.
That's right. That was my sexy voice. Stephanie, thank you so very much. It's such great content. I wished I had been able to listen to every word of it, but I so appreciate you. Everybody I know appreciates you. And if we weren't on mute or Zoom, we would all be standing O, right? Everybody.
Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
Hey, Stephanie.
Thank you. Well, I do have one other thing to share with you. So there is an NLP practitioner class, which is, so Bold kind of water skis NLP, and the NLP practitioner class scuba dives it, right? And so the practitioner class is about $194, so it's not super expensive. And they are, my team leader and my agent services coordinator just went to the NLP class in Austin, and I think we may have them convinced to come to Atlanta in May and do a class. And so the tentative dates are May 20th through 23rd. So I'll send Jill when they definitely lock it down. And I have a code for you guys. If you register for any of their practitioner classes, you can use this code and get 50% off the $194. So that's a super deal. So it's Nielsen NLP. So NIELSEN, spelled wrong on both ends, NLP. And that will give you a 50% discount on their practitioner classes. They teach them around the country. You don't have to wait for it to come to Atlanta. You can go wherever and meet new people, and you will learn a tremendous amount that you can use in your real estate business. They pack it in for the 4 days. And
20th through the
23rd are the dates that they proposed for us. It'll probably be kind of on our end of Atlanta, like Kennesaw area. It's kind of what they're talking about right now. So, and their website is nlp.com. I checked right before we came on. This class is not on there yet, but if you wanted to go to Denver or New Jersey or Austin, those are, or Tampa, those are already up.
That's great.
Did you say 1515 or 50 50% off?
50.
50%?
Like half.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And yeah, so 194 for a 4-day training is already awesome. And then half of that with that code. And
So
I don't
like $82
I don't get any,
or something?
hmm?
Like $82?
Yeah. And I don't get any of the money back for it. I've done the practitioner training with them and the trainer's training with them. And I'm going to go do a class. Y'all feel really sorry for me. I'm going to go do a class with them in Hawaii in March.
Oh, poor thing.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it?
I might go to
What
that.
you
one
have
too.
to do for work.
Yeah. Yes, it's absolutely, it's work based. It's an energy class, HUNA, in March. No prerequisite for that. You could still go.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll come with you.
Okay, come on. My son and I are going.
I'll drive you to the airport, Jill.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate your time, and anything I can do to help you, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. You're
Thank
wonderful,
you.
as always.
Have a
Thanks.
great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Have a good day, everyone.